This is the unrestricted free agent.
The Jimbo Fisher stuff. Were you in the room the other day when he threw?
Was. Part of the reason we had so much fun beating Clemson was because we used to talk a lot of shit to them and they couldn't handle it.
You feel fine, but your hands are shaking.
Coach Spurrier couldn't give a damn.
I want to take these athletes and mentor them.
Why can't the Gamecocks win at the SEC tournament?
So sunny all the time, so hot.
Too sunny.
Too sunny.
Fans are going to be fans, and people who understand the sport are going to talk sports.
With some weird dynamics.
It's going to be painful, but I think at the end of the day, we'll be stronger people for it.
Good, isn't it? Feeling good on a Tuesday of game week. I got a depth chart we can all overanalyze. I got a hot take for you on announcing starting quarterbacks that applies to an SEC football program. We got recruiting nerds rejoicing yesterday. We got it all today. It's all coming together, people. It's all coming together. Welcome in. Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent. Glad you're a part of the program. Game week, college football. And if you're going to be that, don't be that guy. Hey, actually, college football started last weekend. Didn't you watch Nebraska and Northwestern? We all saw it, okay, especially from the Gamecock perspective. And don't be one of those. Don't be Skip Bayless. Don't. Oh, Will Muschamp had a bunch of talent. Look at Ryan Olinsky playing quarterback. Guys, Olinsky didn't work out at Carolina. We all know Will Muschamp, the quarterback killer. Okay, it's over. It's done with. Move on. Spencer Rattler is the South Carolina quarterback. There's no reason for any Gamecock fan to complain about the quarterback position on Tuesday of game week. Okay, let's just move. Luke Doty seems to be the depth chart is out, people. You got last year's starting quarterback as the clear number 2. Healthy. Spencer Rattler, preseason Heisman Trophy candidate, favorite last year as your starting quarterback. No reason to complain. Look at that. I'm just coming in complaining. Complaining about people that complain. Ridiculous. DC, good morning to you, sir. First in. Anthony, good morning, UFAs. He's letting everybody know. Ken, love the energy. Can you have live chat energy? There's definitely live chat frequency. I guess if you have the all caps or the extended good morning, to me, that's energy. Josh, good to see you in on the live chat as well. Facebook live stream up and rolling. Chris, morning, fellow Gamecocks. Got another one, 4 stars, he says. We'll get to that in just a second, Chris. Oh, we got another Chris on the YouTube live stream. Now, this is a problem, right? And I'm in that mindset. I am not that smart to push out what happened just recently in my brain completely and zoom all the way out. Coach Ballgame, who we had on this show before, big in the nicknames, came into town last night. My kids were out there, had a blast, and he's a big nickname guy. So, Chris, from YouTube, we're going to have to get you a nickname. We're going to call you Square Chris. Is that a rectangle? I think that looks like a square to me besides Chris. Square Chris. That's what I'm going to have to call you from now on to separate you from who on this show has been the original Chris on Facebook. Maybe we'll go Facebook Chris and Square Chris to keep you guys separate this morning. Morning all from Craig. Guys, Tuesday at game week. College football, it's such a gift to us every year, isn't it? I was talking to my son about this, the 9-year-old. He's in that spot, but just started 4th grade, where, I mean, he's always been like this with school. Like, I don't really like school, man. Summer is great. You get to play all day. You don't really have a schedule, that freedom. You remember that as a kid? Just remember the freedom, right? One of the reasons why I'm loving doing this show, by the way. The freedom of this format is fantastic. with the freedom of summer and being a kid and the whole thing. And so now that school started, one day he asked me, he's like, didn't you hate school starting? And I was like, no, because it coincides with football season starting. You can't have one without the other. So you got to take the school if you can get football. And that is my complete mindset these days. Still probably a third grade mindset. The 9-year-old probably much more mature than me. So I hope you're able to harness the energy, appreciation for college football season getting ready to kick off on Saturday. Hope it hasn't driven you to too many extremes where maybe you're a little bit too excited. All the news from yesterday. Josh, help me out with that, sir. Ernest Jones is not starting with the Rams. Is that where we're going this morning? He was a tremendous rookie Super Bowl winner last year in the NFL. So if maybe you meant Sherrod Green. I'm guessing that's what you meant, Josh. I'll try to translate this morning because there were very few surprises with the depth chart. We'll get to that in a minute. Sherrod Green not being listed as a starter at linebacker. Mo Kaba was. Maybe. I'm pretty sure what Josh means there. But let's try to go in chronological order. Again, not that bright a guy here. Recency bias is definitely there. Trying to go in the order things happened yesterday. And I'm not sure which happened, but they both happened very quickly after the show wrapped up yesterday at 10 o'clock. 8 to 10 every morning, streaming live. Glad you're a part of the program, especially those hopping in on the live chat, really actively participating. Makes this thing much better than me just up here giving you some kind of ridiculous monologue or soliloquy. Not sure which. I think if you're on the stage, it's a soliloquy, and if you're off of it, it's a monologue. I don't know. I knew it in 9th grade English. I got it right on the test. Let's go with the recruiting news first that you guys already hit on in that live chat. Another 4-star defensive lineman, Desmond. The last name is a little tricky. I got to look at it to try to get it right. Again, not an everyday recruiting nerd, so you guys will have to give me a little bit of leeway here, a little grace. And it's a tough one. Umiazula, Desmond Umiazula. If you say it really fast with confidence, I think everybody just moves on and doesn't call you out typically. Desmond Umiazula. From the DMV area again, another 4-star guy, another DMV. And I didn't even really know this was the thing, by the way. I'm trying to think of other maybe 3-place areas that Texarkana was one of my first ones that I was exposed to back in the day. Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. The DMV, I guess, is Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. I didn't know that was a thing. To me, it was like the D.C. area, but apparently it is. Maryland, Upper Marlboro, the spot for Umiazula. And another 4-star lineman. This one pushed up the national rankings, just a spot or two, I think. The Gamecock 16th on the On3 composite one, I think, or maybe the specific On3 one. I think I've seen another. It was 24/7 composite at 15 in the country. It continues to lay a tremendous foundation. Trenches, hashtag, continuing to trend for Gamecock fans. You can't see yesterday's news and not feel good about the direction that things are moving, I think, for the Gamecock football program in a lot of ways. Makes sense. Okay, I see you guys weighing in. Wanted to hit on the recruiting first. Now, that news right there, if this were 2 or 3 weeks ago, would be talked about even more because of just the nature of college football and the cycle, right? Where not a whole lot going on, especially if it was before preseason practice 4 weeks ago. We'd break it down. We'd overanalyze it completely. But fortunately, we have game week this week, and we had even more news after that. The old live mascot drama saga finally put to rest, I think. Finally put to rest. the University of South Carolina coming out and saying the new live mascot name, the Gamecock, formerly known as Sir Big Spur, will now be known as the General. This thing, Corey Miller really, I think, put it in the correct light yesterday for us. And it was great having Corey on. If you missed it, go check it out on the YouTube channel or podcast deal, however you check it out. And you can get segments on the YouTube channel as well if you want to do it in smaller pieces. But Corey was great the entire second hour of yesterday's show, and he's going to be on with us every Monday. We got Rick Sanford coming up today at 9 o'clock as well, another Gamecock great with plenty of experience talking about the Gamecocks as well, and tremendous insight. So looking forward to having Rick on today as well. But Corey, I never thought about this. Like it had people talking about Gamecock football to some degree, right? Me, I am a curmudgeon when it comes to these things a lot of times. And it didn't even it irks me so much, or irked me so much to just have this. I think everybody who follows Gamecock football understands how the national perception of just the University of South Carolina in general, the Gamecocks, can be, right? Remember that clip from The Simpsons always sticks out to me. Who was it? Lisa Simpson, right? It was a smart one. No, I don't want to be a Gamecock, talking about applying to schools, or I think I forget. It was not shown in a good light, the University of South Carolina, in that way. Can be a punchline, right? And that's where this live mascot thing, that's where it got me. Like, I'm probably a little overly sensitive about that, having a degree from the University of South Carolina. And so just that this became national news, it just seemed like the most South Carolina thing ever, in not a good way. That the former owners had trademarked the name, the contract ran out, they weren't going to renew it with the school because the current owners weren't honoring the tradition of a fighting gamecock cutting off the comb on top of the head because they were concerned that it's supposed to keep the animal cool. They thought it was inhumane. Just, man, really, we can't figure this out like adults, in an adult manner. I feel like that was my thing, right? But that's what it was. So there had to be a new mascot name. That whole Cock Commander thing came out, which was a fascinating social media snapshot about how it was just kind of it was legendary at the Daily Gamecock, the student newspaper, that it actually got in the newspaper back in 2004, and now this thing had come back around 18 years later and got a life of its own. And then the New York Post picks it up. And Corey's point yesterday, in this long-winded little rant here, sorry, I got issues with this stuff, just working them out. But his point was, hey, people are talking about South Carolina football in August nationally. There is attention on the program. That is a good thing. That is part of being a head coach and understanding the game. And good for Shane Beamer. Smart move. I don't know if it was part of his grand plan or he had anything to do with that. I find that hard to believe, but it's the right way to look at it. Corey, dead on. Just seeing that being in the news, good thing. And now I'm glad it's over. I was close last week on the name of the new Sir Big Spur name. Yeah, DC, what did you go with? I forget which one. Chris, to me, he'll always be known as Sir Big Spur. Okay. It's a live mascot thing. The connection, if you guys have a spiritual connection with Sir Big Spur, Chris, I'm not going to get in the way, man. You call him whatever you want to call him. The general, I'm glad it was not something that other fan bases can just mock completely. It's a little generic, right? I think the Citadel's live mascot is also named the General, maybe, or something. And I guess the technical explanation was to honor Thomas. Was it Sumter? General Sumter? I don't even know exactly. It should have been the conductor, the leader of the Shane train. Okay. Yeah, but I don't think you want a Gamecock doing that. What else we got here? Burning question of the day, are they going to put a big white mustache on the general, right, with the Shaq commercials? Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. I'm just glad that chapter is closed. We're moving on. So let's do that on the show, too. If you guys have strong opinions, it seems like Chris will always be old school. To me, my ultimate takeaway is here. Corey schooled me up yesterday. He educated me. It's right. He's right. You had people maybe even thinking about the South Carolina football program or reading about it, just it adds relevance to some degree. And now it ultimately, I think it ended up as a non-punchline, which is a good thing. It's the next NIL deal with the insurance company. Now, who would get paid off this NIL deal? You have to get a player in conjunction with the live mascot, and apparently now we know there are contracts involved with the live mascot's owners and the University of South Carolina, which is, wow. So, I mean, again, pageantry, tradition, history, passion of the fan base. That's why we love college football. And this is kind of an unintended consequence, I feel like. Happy to move on from this thing. Happy. Very pleased to move on from that to actual game stuff coming. Speaking of that, so we got the depth chart to overanalyze. And Josh did confirm that I figured out where he was going with the linebacker position with Mo Kaba over Sherrod Green. No, not a massive surprise. Look, Will Muschamp, if you ever need to summarize Will Muschamp's disconnect with being a good football coach but a bad head coach, would just, you could go and watch him kind of lecturing or mocking those of us and how we digested a depth chart. He just never got it. He never could connect fan base with program. It was always distinctly different. There was always a separation. To him, it was like church and state, it seems like. And he couldn't do it. Maybe he didn't value it. Maybe it was the Saban mindset. I don't know what it was. But as a college football program, when you put out your depth chart and you have fans questioning this or that instead of taking it sensitively, Ray Tanner was the best at explaining this publicly one time. He's like, when our fans are being critical of our program, you got to take it as a compliment because they care so much about it. They want to win so bad. Ultimately, that's a good thing. So that's how you have to internalize it as a coach or player. And it's so true. I mean, you can, I get the human response. You're supposed to be supporting me. Why are you criticizing me? Kind of deal, right? That is very human. That is the absolute knee-jerk response. We all have that in us, right? But then when you get to a certain level, when you're playing major college sports, you got to be able to put that distraction out. And you need to tell yourself something. And I think that Ray Tanner line of, no, just think about it. Think about it for a second. If they're expecting more out of you, it's really a compliment. They understand how talented you are. They understand that this program can achieve major things. If they didn't understand that or expect and think that, then what kind of program would it be? What kind of player would you be? Same thing with the depth chart in college football. Same thing as a head coach. If you don't have fans over analyzing your depth chart, then nobody cares. And that's what you can't have as a major college football program. And if you don't understand that, if you're so thin-skinned that you have to mock your own fans for overanalyzing your depth chart, then you don't get it. And Muschamp never got it, right? Or he got it and then he became oversensitive because of the baggage of that Florida failure coming to South Carolina. I don't know which ultimately it was. In the end, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if he never got it or He always kind of looked down his nose at his own fans, the school's own fans. But the depth chart this time of year is a gift to those of us who aren't allowed to see it every single day. You don't allow us in. College coaches, like NFL coaches, are required to, which is always an amazing thing to me, right? How does the NFL, they have practices with other teams. That's how much they let others in. To me, it's a very strong position to be in, right? Hey, this is what we do. Come the season, you're going to have to stop it. You're going to know what we do, but we know, or we think that we still are going to be able to do it because we can execute despite you're trying to stop us. You knowing what we're trying to do. Why do you think, Steve Sarkisian looks like he's going down the Muschamp road? This was leading me. So, specific depth chart things. Josh pointed out, Sherrod Green not listed as a starting middle linebacker. Mo Kaba is. Good question. Corey Miller seemed very high on Sherrod Green. He was talking about sideline to sideline kind of guy. When you play in a Clayton White defense and you got the 4-2-5, is that would work out? Yeah, 4-2-5, I think we're calling it. And it's kind of weird because of how they play the edges, I think. But basically 4-2-5, right? 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. You got to have guys who can get sideline to sideline at linebacker. And that has been a position, let's be kind here, not a position of strength for the Gamecocks recently. So that you're going to have to get good play from all of your linebackers, not just the 2 listed starting. Brad Johnson, the other starting linebacker listed, I believe. But Sherrod Green's going to get a lot of run. You're going to have Debo Williams step up and make a bunch of plays as well. Another guy listed in the second team. I think you're going to have to see some other guys. Those are 4 we're talking about, right? Linebacker in the SEC, odds are you're going to need more than 4 guys from a health standpoint, a depth standpoint. Exactly, Chris. I'm going to get to that in a second. Imagine how LSU fans feel with Brian Kelly not releasing who QB1 is until game day, until game time, I think it is. Whatever it is. Get into that in a second. Other depth chart stuff. What stuck out to me was no third-string quarterback on that list. And good morning to you, Roger. Appreciate your sunny outlook, sir. What stuck out to me also, Marshawn Lloyd, RB1, running back 1, and then it's Juju Smith-Schuster. I know, Juju Smith-Schuster. That's the dumbest thing I've ever said, maybe, right? Juju McDowell. I don't know why my head went there, but I know why. My apologies. Thanks for sticking with me there. Juju McDowell or Christian Beal-Smith. I think I'd already fast-forwarded to the double name, triple name there. That's who's listed as the backup running back. Those guys are or Xavier Legette or Juice Wells, I think, listed out at receiver. And then Amarion Brown was impressed. So the fact that Xavier Legette fought his way to the top of the depth chart at wide receiver, at least as an or, and then Amarion Brown as well, fighting his way in there. Those stuck out to me from the offensive perspective. Tyshawn Wanamaker ended up getting beat out on the right tackle job. Dylan Wanham earning that one, I believe. So experience, depth on the offensive line. 3 guys who have started, I think, listed now at second team. These are the things, if we're going to really overanalyze and get to the X's and O's and be serious about football on the field and who's going to be playing what position, that's what stuck out to me from the Gamecock offense. Do we need a third quarterback? You better hope not, right? But it was interesting to me, having heard Marcus Satterfield talk about it, I think in his weekly press conference, might have been last week or week before, just about the young guys developing. And, most teams, I think, list a third-team quarterback. It's not like Carolina doesn't have some options there. I think it is that they are as close as they are and as young, underdeveloped as they are. To me, this is someone was asking a while back about, do you think you'll see Colton Gauthier on the field in game number 1? And I said, well, that would be ideal, but I don't think that's even a consideration. The fact that they haven't put him in that spot, I think being in his at least second year, full year in the program, maybe 2.5 or third year, that was an interesting move. And a lot of times this depth chart stuff has less to do with exactly how the coaches are thinking about this thing and more to do with the actual program and some long-term stuff. For instance, you don't want quarterbacks to transfer maybe, so you put them in there right now. I thought that was an interesting move, not having a third-team quarterback on the depth chart. That's all. Yeah, Craig, I'm with you about Stone Blanton, freshman linebacker. I think he's going to get on the field. Certainly, I would think special teams will be the first time we see him, a kickoff return, kickoff coverage kind of deal. And if you see him on the field at linebacker early, I don't think that's a good sign unless it's a Colton Gauthier third-string quarterback situation where the game is already in hand. In game number 1, you're hoping that will be with a big lead, right? DeCarrion Joyner is, I think, maybe where it was a Marion Brown / or DeCarrion Joyner at wide receiver. That was interesting as well. Yeah, Chris, I'm with you. You love Juju McDowell as your second running back, kind of change of pace guy, and Christian Beal-Smith, more of the thumper type running back, I think. I think you got to love the fact that Marshawn Lloyd has separated himself. You didn't get those three guys where Marcus Satterfield has been very clear in the past. He did it last year and said, no, I don't want a running back by committee. I want a guy. You got to get him in a rhythm, get him a bunch of carries. And that's the ideal scenario from the offensive coordinator's perspective. I think most of us as fans from the outside can identify with that, while understanding you can't just have one guy. You got to have multiple running backs to contribute. You just want to have the guy and then some other ones who are dominating their role to steal the line from Monty Lee. Jason in this morning. Greetings, sir. Daddy-O, great question. Do we see a balanced attack in the first half? I think this will tell us a lot about 2022 Gamecock football, won't it? Dramatic coffee swig right now, 27 minutes in. Oh, still hot. Lukewarm. Still good. Still good coffee this morning on Tuesday morning. What do you think? What do you want to see? I think in game number 1 against Georgia State specifically, and I believe, Corey Miller brought this up again yesterday, and I'm totally with him here. I understand Spencer Rattler is a very exciting development at quarterback. You definitely want to see Carolina being able to throw the ball down the football field. But in game number 1 against Georgia State, especially with Arkansas and Georgia looming, as opposed to, and that was another really bothersome deal with Will Muschamp. It was always, we got to have a balanced offense. Got to make sure you can throw and run. Yeah, no kidding. Now, I mean, that was kind of the definition. And man, I'm working out all the Muschamp issues today, aren't I? That was a defensive coach talking offensive football, I think, in a lot of ways, and not understanding what G.A. Mangus told us, or maybe just not. Either it wasn't understanding or just coming at it from a different philosophy from the defensive mindset that G.A. Mangus, an offensive guy, tells other offenses that he consults. He is a consultant for. You got to major in something. And that's the offensive identity that Will Muschamp was never able to develop on any of his teams, and is why he's a defensive coordinator now and probably will be the rest of his career. So I say all that, Daddy-O, to get to my point of agreeing with Corey Miller yesterday. You got to run the football. You got to establish the line of scrimmage when you're South Carolina and you're playing Georgia State. In game number 1 especially, where your quarterback and your receivers haven't developed the timing and the trust and the confidence in games yet. Now, you hope they've developed it for sure, spring ball and summer and workouts and the whole thing. And you better have that to a certain level going into game number one, but you just can't replicate game experience, right? You just can't. You don't. There's still a lot more unknown there, I think, than, hey, hand the ball off to your big-time SEC running back behind a very experienced offensive line and let them go to work. Because I think if you can't see that, if you don't see success there, then all this talk about an improved offense, more weapons, year two in the same offense for the first time in a while for South Carolina, improvement in the whole thing, all that is just hot air, man. You can't move Georgia State consistently as an SEC football team. You're not going to be a good SEC football team. And I'm not trying to say that Georgia State is an FCS quality opponent. We all know they're not. But that's why it's a really good opener in a lot of ways. It's a solid test that you should pass. Corey mentioned yesterday, if Carolina plays a B- game, they should win the game. So it's not a massive threat, but it is certainly enough of one to get your attention. And when the other guy used to be the interim head coach for your university is from just down the road, you got a guy like Jamias Williams who used to be a starter in that secondary, and that was another one of the other weird parts of the Muschamp era. He started one game on the road in the SEC, and it started most of the season for you, and then the next day, he wasn't even part of the program. And now he's not even a defensive player at all. Crazy. Don't sleep on Carroll. He was a borderline 5-star running back coming out of high school. Lavoisier, you're talking about? Craig, he's not on the depth chart for a reason. And again, man, you gotta let that high school stuff go. I get it. Big time prospect. He originally committed to South Carolina, then changed it, ended up going to Georgia. But there's a reason now he's back at South Carolina too. And I think it's a great sign that he's not on the depth chart. It's a great sign that Marshawn Lloyd does have that chance to be the next really good South Carolina running back, to take that next step that we didn't get to see last year coming off the injury. Not that we didn't get to see it, that we just didn't see. It didn't happen. That Juju McDowell continues to be a really reliable guy who can make plays. That Christian Beal-Smith, who's coming in as Wake Forest's leading rusher last year, is ahead of a guy who didn't crack the rotation at Georgia. I think that's a very good sign. Eventually, Craig, Lavoisier Carroll, could he hop in there? I think eventually. Or if injuries happen, sure. But the fact that he's down there, I think is a good sign. Great sign of running back depth right now. Yeah, Chris, that's kind of where I'm at with that balanced offense question. You got to dominate the line of scrimmage. You got to stop the run on the defensive side of the ball, but you got to be able to run the ball consistently, I think, to inspire confidence in your offense. Then certainly you take a shot here or there, go play action, the whole deal. But in the first half, like you're talking about, I think it definitely needs to be run-centric. You got to see some success in the run game. And I don't know, maybe if Georgia State is thinking that way as well and going heavy in the box, if you will, bringing a bunch of people up the line of scrimmage, maybe you will see more passing. Maybe you will see a lot of confidence in Spencer Rattler and the wide receiving core and tight ends, running backs out of the backfield. I don't know, but I don't think that's best case scenario. Was kind of my point there. So depth chart is out. A great part of the preseason in college football. It's a lot like preseason magazines, right? You go back, you look, see how many returning starters. All right, what kind of transfer situation you got going in here? How does your team compare to the other teams in the division, in the conference? in the region, in the country. It's all conjecture, right? It means very little. And again, I mentioned that my kids pulled out last year's preseason magazines they found the other day, and they read pretty ridiculous in a lot of ways, right? This original depth chart might end up being pretty laughable at the end of the season, because preseason practice, as much as you try to replicate games, they just ain't games. They're not. You'll know a lot more about South Carolina through the first 3 games than they know right now. And there might be a lot that changes. And that might not be a bad thing. That might show, like Lavasia Carroll at running back, it might show depth in the program. Certainly seems to be improved depth. Yeah, Chris, they better be. I don't think Juju's up to 200, is he? Is it at 200? He says he noticed that the 3 running backs on the depth chart are tree trunks. LOL, 5'9", between 200 and 220. I mean, that's just kind of what you got to be at the position these days. Maybe not limited height, but you got to be able to take shots. It is violent, man. If you're ever down near field level, you know. Whew. But it's part of the main part of why we love it, right? So the depth chart coming out, great gift to those of us as fans who can look at it, overanalyze that thing, try to see exactly what it means in the whole deal. Ultimately, I get it. And I'm not telling you that Will Muschamp's words were wrong. I'm telling you that his message was very misplaced in mocking media nerds overanalyzing a depth chart. Because that's just the conduit, right, between the program and the fans. Media nerds putting it out there, which happens less and less, or the lines are less and less defined now with everybody having social media. So you got to embrace all of that, man. And that's exactly where you guys mentioned that LSU not naming a starting quarterback. Brian Kelly. This is a Muschamp thing to do too, right? What do you guys do? Why? What do you think? I get it. You're that guy who plays poker. You win the hand by betting out the pot, and you don't show your cards. In a friendly game, a family game, you're that guy, right? Nope, not showing. You didn't pay for it. Come on, man. What are you hiding? You're not fooling anybody. Isn't it? And I heard the other day, Nussmeier and Daniels, the 2 quarterbacks left there after he already had one, just walk away with his NIL money after going into his 6th year, right? What are you doing? You're saying that your quarterbacks are very similar. They both can run, both can throw. So what's the deal? To me, this is a sign of weakness as a coach for your program in general, right? That you just can't put it out there. Either a sign of weakness or lack of confidence in your starting quarterbacks, or maybe just your quarterback's ability to handle this. You're not coming out and saying it, but how I translate this is that you don't have 2 big boys that you know the moment won't be too big for, or are completely equipped to play quarterback in the SEC, major college football. Because what are you worried about? How the backup quarterback, how he's going to handle this publicly, or everything that's going to come at him? Or are you worried more about your starting quarterback and how he's going to handle the success of winning them? I don't know. Or are you just trying to say that, no, you have the advantage of not naming a quarterback going in, like your opponent is just going to be completely shocked when one guy or the other guy trots out there? So ridiculous. So weak. Or are you just trying to get attention on your program? Is that Brian Kelly's big chess move here? Does he know curmudgeons like me are going to try to hop up on the soapbox today after seeing this and say, what are you doing? I can't believe it. But you're talking about LSU football, so you're good with that in the end? I don't know. Maybe that's the mastermind play here. Great point, Chris. What about football doesn't get overanalyzed, especially this time of year, right? DC, less worried about the identity of the offense in the first half, saying I really want to see us run it down their throats late in the game with a 3-score lead. Daddy, great point, man. And this is also what Brian Kelly has to understand. You are a mockery of the sports world immediately upon faking your Southern accent at Pete Maravich Coliseum. I think they still call it that down in Baton Rouge. When you were introduced the first time you spoke publicly as the LSU football coach. He said Kelly's just trying to nail his post-game Southern accent. And he realizes he got caught. Like, he's tried to play it off and say he's got 3 different accents, I think, right? Originally being from Boston and going to the Midwest and coaching at Cincinnati and Notre Dame and then coming down to LSU. It just seems so weak. So weak. Name a starting quarterback. It's not that difficult. It's not always chess. And again, this is more I think the respect and the relationship that you have as a head coach and the CEO of a program to your own fan base than it is anything else. And having watched that Muschamp era, I feel like I do have a really wealth of research to base this take on now, and especially now to see him sandwiched in between Steve Spurrier and Shane Beamer. Yeah, but we're probably overanalyzing it, right? Who knows? Jaden Daniels, who I firmly believe will start this game. I mentioned that way back in SEC media days when Kelly's talking about basing his offense, tailoring his offense to the skills that his quarterback presents, that whichever quarterback wins the job. Brian Kelly likes mobile quarterbacks. Most offensive minds these days, even Steve Spurrier got to that point, right, where you realize it's much better, much more advantageous to have a mobile quarterback than it is to have a guy back there as a statue. Steven's going to be that guy. Love it. What do you want to see if Carolina wins the coin toss? Carolina on defense or Spencer Rattler takes the field on his first drive as a Gamecock? It happened last year, I think. Carolina got the ball first. I'm pretty sure they won the toss and took the ball. And 3 and out against Eastern Illinois. To me, having been to a bunch of season openers, knowing what Williams-Brice Stadium will be at 7:32, whenever they kick it off exactly, September 3rd, Saturday night, probably, I'm guessing, we've seen that intro video on social media where the lights do change with the video. It won't quite be the full effect of that we will see in late October and November with daylight savings time. It's still going to be basically what you're seeing behind me if you're watching the video portion of this show. It's very much going to be dusk. Like, this is well into a game, and I think it was from last year, where you're still seeing dusk and a blue sky at Williams-Brice Stadium. 7:30, early September, still plenty of sunlight. So you're not going to get the full effect of the LED lights intro maybe that you will when you get pitch darkness in those late season games. But just the fact that college football is back where Carolina is in year number 2 in Shane Beamer, it is going to be an emotional, what do you call those things? Powder keg? Is that what they're called? Something about the blow. I think it's a powder keg, right? That's what it will be. So I'm always a defense guy, right? You play defense with passion and energy and the whole thing. And yes, you do run the risk of guys being so amped up that they're not paying attention to their keys or their eye discipline, all that mess that you hear talked about on defense, right? And they just want to go make a play and be the hero. And that can cause problems big time on defense. I get that. But I think a defense can handle that a little bit better than an offense can. I mean, Jake Bentley was the worst at it, wasn't he? From the South Carolina perspective, you could tell that it was just too juiced coming out. And that was kind of the first big crack in the foundation, I think, of otherwise what was a great recipe, it seemed like. Great recipe with a great resume for a college quarterback to have. And it was just the sign that he couldn't handle some moments there. It just wasn't all what you needed to be that next tier guy as your quarterback in the SEC. So I say all that to say I want my defense on the field, especially I'm the more talented team. Let's go get a stop, get good field position, and have the ball to start the second half. That's my mindset. It seems like maybe Shane Beamer thinks otherwise. I think he might take the ball if he gets the chance. I'm guessing that question might be asked today at his preview press conference, 1:30. Game week is here, another reminder. Kens, how much does Carolina need to beat Georgia State by for you to be satisfied? I'd say 17-20. I think that's fair, Ken. But we all know there are different final scores and different levels of satisfaction that come with them. For instance, what I just saw over the weekend, Florida State and North Carolina. You look at those box scores, 47-7, I think the Florida score final was. And then North Carolina scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to make it 56-24. So they both win very comfortably. I think Florida State fans feel a lot better about their opener than North Carolina fans feel about theirs. You're only up 11 points against Florida A&M going into the fourth quarter, and then you pull away. Well, you should, right? You're the ACC team there. You're playing against a team not only that you have much more talent than, but also had some eligibility issues, and where even the roster was more depleted than it normally would be. And it took you until that fourth quarter for it for you to really establish dominance, as opposed to Florida State, who dominated Duquesne, which they obviously always should, and I didn't even know how to football team, but they did it from the jump. So I'd say it's less to me. It's a lot like I look at the season outlook as well. It's less numbers than it is eye test and level of competitiveness throughout, right? And then there are, I think you do have to allow for a little wiggle room, right? Sometimes there's a crazy bounce that doesn't go your way. But I'd say in general, yeah, 17-20 is very fair. You got to cover the spread to feel good about it. You got to win the game by more than 12. A couple of touchdowns for sure. But also, we don't know how Georgia State's going to look, right? I mean, South Carolina fans have seen that look in Sean Elliott's eyes, right? I'll never forget it. It was like Braveheart, man, on the field at Williams-Brice, 2015, South Carolina Vanderbilt, after it's all gone down, right? And there was a palpable feeling on my shoulders doing radio in the afternoon there at 107.5 The Game that year, co-hosting with Jay Phillips, of relief that the Spurrier era, it had finally ended. We didn't have to speculate about how it was going to end, and it was going poorly that year, right? And then Spurrier pulls the plug and gets called a quitter, and everybody comes at him from that perspective as well. And then there's assistant coaches just going in and meeting with Ray Tanner at the time, C.G.A. Mangus, who's going to be the interim head coach. And Sean Elliott ends up getting the nod. And then I'll never forget, my point is, we've all seen the look in Sean Elliott's eyes. I'll never forget being on the field, camera guy, 2001. You line up with the band there. You try to get the nice clean shot of the guys coming out to 2001. And it's the craziest thing, man. One of the craziest things ever. Feeling the energy of that moment, having gone through the end of an era, the end of the most successful era of South Carolina football by far, and then a dramatic end to that, and then starting the new one with Sean Elliott as the interim coach, first game. And I got the close-up of Sean Elliott, who's out in front for the very first time, leading the troops onto the field as 2001 is blaring, and just see, like a movie moment, Elliott is always intense and focused. Like he's the guy that gained the reputation for being extra intense pre-games, jumping out, headbutting with his offensive linemen, slapping around, getting in the scrum, right, mixing it up. But then it's all this. This is his big moment, right? It's one of his big. He's the head coach in an SEC game as an App State guy in his playing days from Camden. He's at Williams-Brice Stadium. His dad, I believe, was a highway patrolman there that used to work the games, right? This is all built up, and then it's all together. And then I see him start to put his hand up, and like it's Braveheart, lifts up the visor like Spurrier has died and shows it to the crowd. It reminded me like it have been back in the day where these violent tribes would take a head that they just conquered a land and show it to the masses, bloodthirsty masses, and like hold it up as a trope. It was maybe the most dramatic thing I've ever witnessed on a football field. But that's who Carolina's going to play. So I that memory again, and just to be doing that like through a little viewfinder and having the camera on that moment, just being like, what is going on here? This is crazy. Is he just going to yell freedom? Or was he interim? It was wild. And Sean Elliott has that wild look in his eye every now and again, and it's going to be there on Saturday night from the Georgia State perspective. So my point was, if Georgia State plays a near-perfect game, plays out of their minds, way above their heads, knowing Jamias Williams has a shot to get back at the SEC program that just kicked him to the curb when he wasn't playing well and made him play defense to begin with, and now he's on offense, and he's breaking all kind of tackles and making all kind of moves. And if Georgia State plays next to perfect, Carolina clearly doesn't, and they win the game by 11 instead of covering the spread. I don't know. You say, hey, Georgia State won a bowl game last year. They're going to be pretty good. Sean Elliott, this is the game of his life in a lot of ways. The next game of his life. Coming back and trying to stick it to the program that he feels like he never got a real shot to be the head coach of. So that's a dramatic answer, Ken. So it's not just a number there. You score a meaningless touchdown late to make it 17 or 20, but you struggled through the whole game. Georgia State doesn't play well, but you don't play well. There are penalties all over the place. I don't think satisfied is going to be the word, or encouraged. I think encouraged needs to be the word to begin with there, Ken. I think that's how that's what most Gamecock fans are looking for. The next reason to be encouraged, another reason on the field, a lot like things ended last year, to be encouraged, because you got to think you have a chance, a legitimate chance at winning your next two games. You got to be encouraged out of this opener, I think, as opposed to satisfied. Not that it always is a 1 + 1 = 2 scenario, though, in college football, but I think that's what most people will be hoping for from a Gamecock perspective. Daddy-O is always defense first with the crowd noise. Yeah, that goes into it for me too. Yep, Chris, I'm with you. So you guys are with me on this thing. We'll be so loud and pumped. The last thing you want to do is tell a jacked up crowd to be quiet, right? Can you imagine that? That would be a must-chant thing to do, right? All right, Spencer, glad to have you out here, which Spencer Rattler never would have come to Carolina if Will Muschamp had been there. I got that. Hey, man, go get him. You're the preseason. You were the Heisman Trophy guy. You're our guy. Go get him. Now that we got everybody jacked up, get out there and give them the old hands down, wave the crowd down. Hey, guys, we're trying to audible here. You guys need to be a good fan base and understand our offense needs quiet. Class. Florida A&M did beat the spread at least. They did. I guess the spread had to be about 30 or so, 33. So it was right around 35, I'm guessing. 56-24, the final score last week. I would not feel good today if I was a North Carolina fan. Exactly, Troy. That's my point. Even though that number got high, and you say going in the game, you got to, if you, what do you think, 30? You win this thing by 30, you'll feel good? Be satisfied? Yeah, 30 seemed very fair. But it didn't turn out to be. Like a battle flag, Chris. Yes, it was exactly like a battle flag. Holding up the visor, Sean Elliott. It was actually 45, Stephen? Oh, the line was 45 from North Carolina, Florida A&M. Yeah, I'm guessing those late developments of the Florida A&M eligibility issues probably pushed that thing way up there, or definitely didn't hurt. Oh, good morning to you. Welcome in. Great to see you. Game week on Tuesday. Excited about it. Excited about getting Rick Sanford in on the program here in just a couple of minutes as well. First round draft pick from Gamecock football. Love his insights, and he said that he thinks Carolina's closing the gap. He likes Spencer Rattler. So we'll be interested, and that was a couple of weeks ago, I think. We'll be interested to hear where he's at now, just a couple of days away from the season starting. DC says season would pretty much be a wrap if what? Where did that come in? I was a little late popping that one up. It was a couple minutes ago. DC said that if what happens, the season would pretty much be a wrap, because that's the great thing about college football. No, even Georgia State comes in and wins, season's not a wrap. It's a great thing about college football. 1 week does not necessarily mean you know what's going to happen the next week. If you maybe I was saying where you can't move the line of scrimmage or something like that. No. I mean, what do we see? We saw it so distinctly in the last couple of years, where remember when Kentucky came into Williams-Brice? It's the one time that Carolina's beaten Kentucky recently, and the Gamecocks ran all over them. And I think it was the next week, couldn't run the ball at all. You see it happen sometimes. It happens. What normally doesn't happen on this show is a break. We like to go 2 hours strong here. I wanted, just in case you didn't get yesterday's program, you didn't see all of it even. It was a great finish for Corey Miller yesterday. Just casually mentioned the fact that he played with Lawrence Taylor, and someone was like, "You played with Lawrence Taylor?" Absolutely, he did back in the day with the New York Giants. And so asked him a go-to Lawrence Taylor story. Mentioned that he'd just seen him for the first time in years playing at a golf deal, and gave us a great one. So I wanted to make sure you guys saw or heard that. Even if you did, it's certainly worth another listen today, and is a great way to wrap up hour number 1 as we get ready for our next Gamecock football legend joining us here on the program for hour 2 today. And Rick Sanford, first round draft pick, and just so thankful to have these guys in their perspectives, and really looking forward to breaking it all down for football season this year. Here's former New York Giant, Gamecock Hall of Famer Corey Miller on from yesterday. If you missed it, you can go back to the YouTube channel and catch some segments or the entire show. You can listen to the podcast as well. He jumped in about an hour in, just like Rick Sanford set to do today. So here is Corey Miller from yesterday.
When I'm going against the Hogs and Joe Jacoby, who was the ugliest human being I ever seen. The dude, I mean, I don't even know how he got his head in that helmet. Tell me, he was an ugly dude, and he's about 6'8", right? And I was running up the field, and he just pushed me by. And LT said, "Hey, man, listen here, we call him Young Buck. He said, listen here, Young Buck, you know, you got to set him up. I was like, what you talking about? He's like, you know, if you run up the field, he's just going to push you by. He said, you got to hit him with the Geritol. I'm like, what's the Geritol? He said, let me show you what the Geritol is. So you gotta come off sometimes old and slow. Like, you know, Geritol, like old folks. He said, you got to come off old and slow. And then you got to hit him on the inside. Let him think you're going on the inside. Like if you make him set his feet, and then you hit him with a boop, boop. You hit him on the shoulder and a quick rip, and you're going to get your sack, young buck. So we call this move the Geritol. I use it all the time.
Fantastic stuff from Corey Miller yesterday. Lawrence Taylor, story time. We'll try to do that every week. We get Corey if we can. And going to have Mondays during the football season, like I mentioned before. Fortunate enough to get another Gamecock great in on Tuesdays during football season. Today, Rick Sanford on the move, joining us in the car there. You got a driver and everything? Or are you driving and talking, Rick? What's going down?
You got to love it, don't you? I'm telling you, jack of all trades, master of none.
Well done, sir. Where are you headed, or is it a location not to be disclosed?
Well, no, I'm actually going up to see my mother in Rock Hill right now.
Fantastic. So cruising. That's a I-77 we're seeing right now. The trees of I-77, a little overpass. Looks like you might be just at Blythewood, somewhere in there, huh?
Well, I'm on 20 right now, trying to get over to I-77.
There we go. All right, you're just starting. So hoping this connection will work for us. Great start. Crystal clear to begin, man. How are you feeling now, just a few days away from college football season at large kicking off?
You know, I'm pretty thrilled about it. I think it's the best time of the year, Tim. It's just, you know, the expectations, everybody's all equal. It's the only time of the year that every team can claim that we're number one. You know, so it's exciting. I think it's exciting to get started. The expectations in South Carolina are a little bit overblown, I think, at this point. But, of course, at Clemson, I think up there, they're obviously expecting, you know, a top four finish, at least to get themselves in position to win. But I just think South Carolina, you know, some of the expectations, I wonder about their offensive line. I really do. I mean, if their offensive line can protect Rattler, I think that this team can be very, very good. Otherwise, if they don't, then, you know, it could set up to be a situation where they it might not be as rosy as we thought coming in.
Well, that's the crazy part, right? Last year, you saw East Carolina, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Clemson on the negative end of the spectrum. On the positive end, you saw Florida, Auburn, North Carolina. Which team is it really coming into 2022? It's all of that, right? And then, but we have the recency bias of the North Carolina in the bowl game, year number 2, Spencer Rattler added to the mix. I feel like we do it every single year, Rick. If there is a returning offensive line, a lot of experience, then we sometimes, unfortunately, incorrectly project that the offensive line will be a strength of the team. And a lot of times through the years, we've seen that it just hasn't been the case.
Yeah, I agree, Tim. I think that, you know, South Carolina's offensive line has always been, for years, you know, ever since those really, really good years, it's just kind of been suspect every year coming in, I think. And now, there's going to be a lot expected out of this offensive line. If you look at it, Tim, if they do not play well, this team, they'll struggle. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt they're going to struggle because, you know, the expectations, these running backs, South Carolina's got very, very good running backs. So I don't think you can lay it on the running backs. I think you know, so goes South Carolina, so goes their offensive line, I think that has a lot to do with, and their defensive line. I think that's going to be a big question mark coming in. I think that the ability is there. There's no doubt about it. But South Carolina has given up a lot of yardage running in the past to other teams. And, you know, you just can't do that in the Southeastern Conference and win football games. I think you've got to be somewhat dominant up front on both the offensive and defensive lines in order to be able to be effective in this league.
from your playing day perspective, how important is coaching when it comes to line play specifically? Because to me, you can excuse it or you can explain it away from last year. Offensive line didn't quite know what they were doing. New scheme, new coaches. This is year number 2. Do you really feel like there is a lot to that, or do we kind of overhype that from the outside looking in?
Well, I think coaching has a lot to do with it. I don't think there's any doubt that, if you've got a good football coach, but you got to have players. I mean, that's always been the misnomer to me with fans. They're always saying, well, the guy can't coach. He can't do this. And, well, if he doesn't have very, very good players, he's not going to be a great coach. I mean, let's be honest. You got to have players. And I think, this is the year I think we're going to find out what South Carolina's got up front. I think Coach Atkins is a very, very good coach. I don't think there's a coach over at South Carolina right now that you can say is a bad football coach. I mean, I think you could have said some in the past, but I don't think you can say it now. But I think that it really boils down to the old Jimmies and the Joes. I mean, you got to have players and players that have ability. And then if you've got an effective coach on top of that, then you've got something going there. But I don't think you can. I mean, you can't take chicken shoo-shoo and make chicken salad. It's just one of those things. I mean, you've got to be able to have ability, and I guess this is the year we're going to find out if South Carolina does have ability up front, because they've got some effective running backs. They've got good receivers. Heck, they've got a quarterback over there that they've never had ability-wise. I mean, you can go back in history of South Carolina football, and I don't think has South Carolina ever had a 5-star quarterback? I don't think so. I mean, I might be wrong, but I ability-wise, and after watching Rattler during the spring, I think ability-wise, that guy's as good as they've ever had over there. So, it really is going to boil down to, can they protect him and not make him run around and make plays or try to make plays, because I think that's what got him in trouble at times at Oklahoma.
So that leads to the expectation piece that you're talking about. You think those are overblown. What's your expectation for this team? Well,
mine are somewhat tempered. I think you have to look at the schedule. It's very difficult. You've got teams that you're playing. Texas A&M's, I think, is going to be outstanding this year. I think, the whole East, you got to play Georgia early on. I think you have to look at it and say, look, if South Carolina gets out of there with a 8-4 season or anything close to that, even 7-5, Tim, I think that's about where this team is. Now, I might be mistaken, and I think, what you want to do is you want to win all the games that you're supposed to win, and then get yourself into the fourth quarter of games that are toss-ups, or either games that you're not supposed to win. And that's how you turn a 7-5 season or a 6-6 into 8-4 or 9-3. That's how you do that. But I think you have to look at your competition and say, is South Carolina talent-wise on par with Georgia? I don't think so. I don't think they are with Texas A&M right now. Are they catching these teams? Yes, I think they are catching them. I think their ability is, since Shane Beamer has taken over, their ability has gotten a lot better. I mean, there's still some glaring holes on this team, though, if you ask me. And I just don't know over a course of a 12-game season how this team can honestly win more than 7-8 games.
Glaring hole. Since you said if you ask me, I'm going to ask you, what do you got glaring hole-wise for South Carolina 2022?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you, Tim. I apologize.
No problem. Where are the glaring holes for you on the roster on the field?
Well, I think it's not. I think there's some glaring holes. I think I don't know how strong they are right now at linebacker. In the middle, particularly. I don't know how strong they are even, until Jordan Birch proves himself. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we haven't seen, that much out of Jordan Birch since he's been here. So I think he's got all the ability in the world, but I've seen guys have all the ability in the world that never play well throughout college, and then for whatever reason, the light turns on when they get in pro football. I don't know. I mean, it's if they get that opportunity. So, and I've seen vice versa. I've seen some great college players go into pro football and not be so good. So it's it works both ways. But I think there are some holes there. I think the offensive line's a little bit of a, like I said, a question mark. I think they've got ability everywhere, but ability won't win you football games all the time. I mean, you've got to be able to line up, and you better bring it every week in this league. And they better bring it that first week, because that is somewhat of a concern playing this football team, Georgia State. That's not a bad football team, not a bad program. They're very capable of winning that game on you. So I think you have to, the good thing about playing Georgia State, in my opinion, is you're opening up the season with them. You're not catching them 6-7 games down the road where you could have an opportunity to overlook them. So I don't think that this team will overlook Georgia State at all. But I do think that Georgia State, what have they won, Tim? I think they won 3 bowl games in a row. And I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, I don't care who you're playing. If you can go to any bowl game and beat people 3 times in a row, that means that you're doing something right. So you've got, South Carolina, again, I just wonder about some of the places that there's some question marks. And is their secondary as strong as, they've come up and said that they feel like that they've got guys now in the secondary that are going to be really, really good. Well, you got somebody's taking over for Foster back there. I think he's a transfer. I mean, how good is he? I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's still some questions to this football team for South Carolina. But I will say this, and I've said this all along, I do think that South Carolina is closing the gap on Clemson. I really do. I think that, can they beat Clemson this year? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I think if everything goes their way, they possibly could. I mean, that's why you line up and play the game. But I do think that this game's not going to be a runaway this year.
Do we have Rick pop out on us real quick there? I thought that might have been on my end. Well, I'll try to pop him out, pop him back in. That was an odd. Usually you get some eventual or a gradual is the word I'm looking for. A gradual pop out there. He just popped out real quick. We'll see if we can get him right back in. What I was hearing Rick saying, and I think this goes into it, right, for Gamecock fans. Not just the optimism that Carolina fans have based off of last year and Shane Beamer and recruiting, like he just mentioned, and was going to throw that in there. The Gamecocks landed another 4-star guy from the DMV area yesterday and up to 16th in the national rankings that I look at the On3 deals. I think 24/7 might have them at 15th in the country, something like that. So you have that organically within the program, within your own program. But as Rick was talking about, we all know that everyone in the state of South Carolina doesn't look at college football season in a vacuum with just your own program. It is also, all right, what's the rival doing? And to have seen Clemson look a lot more mortal, look a lot more beatable or back to the pack last year, that goes into it. Looks like we got Rick back now from the car, and they maybe it was the I-20 over to I-77, and you hit the Blythewood traffic there. Who knows what happened there, Rick? We got you back now. You got us back as well?
Yes, I apologize, Tim. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, no problem, man. That's all part of the fun of. I love that for live TV perspective, live radio as well, and now we got it on the internet. All the rules are gone. We got no rules in this thing, man. But you were saying closing the gap with Clemson and the whole deal. I was going to ask you, don't you think that goes into all the good vibes around the Carolina program as well, that you saw Clemson, who had been unbeatable? I mean, you got to give Dabo Swinney all the credit in the world, right? Unbeatable within those top 2 programs really in the country, but last year they weren't that. And I think that goes into the mindset of Gamecock fans about closing that gap that you're talking about. Not just that your program's improving, but you saw the other program come back to the fold a little bit.
Well, I agree, but I do give Dabo Swinney a ton of credit. I think you have to give him most of the credit for what's happened at Clemson. that football team has outstanding talent. I mean, you look at their defense this year, Tim. I was just looking at a projected draft next year. They've got 3 defensive players that are projected in the top 15 players to be picked in the NFL draft next year. The linebacker, I believe Simpson is his name, and then you've got the 2 big defensive linemen over there. So that's pretty impressive. I mean, they shouldn't have any problem stopping the run on people, I wouldn't think. But I hear Carolina fans all the time, mocking Dabo. He can't coach. He can't do this. Well, he can organize. So I'll give him that. I think he knows how to hire coaches if he can't coach. You don't win games without being effective like that. And one good thing that he has done at Clemson is he has.
Sorry, Rick just popped out on us again right there. I think maybe it's that Blythewood. We're going to have to get on Blythewood's cell service. But it's all part of the fun here. And I'm sure we'll get Rick to pop back in. What he didn't mention, though, we haven't seen this like this before. Not quite. Where you've had the rise of Clemson football. Dominant. But Brent Venables deserves a ton of credit for that. Right? And now Venables is running Oklahoma. Tony Elliott is running things at Virginia. So without the coordinators there, that to me has been the absolute brilliance of Nick Saban. That he's been able to do it year after year with coordinator after coordinator. And without any drop-off, right? And that kind of goes to where Carolina is this year. How much improvement will you be able to see in year 2 with Marcus Satterfield there? As we got Rick back in there. He's got the coffee going now, and I think I finished mine up. Looks like you're still working on yours over there, Rick. Just popped out a second ago, but we got you back in now.
Yeah,
you were talking about Clemson's dominance.
Well, I apologize. I don't know where
happened again. No problem. We'll get Rick back in there. That's how the cell phones go. The moving nature of the digital interview goes. But without Brent Venables, I think if you're going to get Clemson, it seems to me like that would be the time to do it. That was the shocking thing about last year, right? That they came back to the pack with those guys that had been at the top of their game, getting paid a ridiculous amount of money, being sought after as head coaches. And now they both took the opportunity to go to their programs when they did. Rick, that's kind of the really interesting part to me is, all right, how are you going to do it now? You got different guys in place. Nick Saban's been able to do it. Dabo Swinney is a lot like Saban, understands how the Alabama program has worked. Do you think Clemson will be able to regain their form with different guys running both the offense and defense?
Well, that's a great point. We've seen Nick Saban do it, and now we're going to see if Dabo Swinney can do it. But, a lot of these coaches that Dabo has elevated to have been on that staff for a long time. So it's not like, these guys are somewhat new coming in from other programs. So, the bottom line is they've got good players over there, Tim. And I suspect that this team will be I don't know how good they're going to be in comparison to some of the teams they've had in the past, because I don't think they're as good at quarterback as what they have been with Ugungalai. I hope that I didn't bastardize that too much. I apologize if I did. But I don't think they're as good at quarterback as they have been, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a negative on them. But they've got good players. I mean, and good players win football games, and it's going to be interesting to see what they turn out to be at the end of the seasons. I've seen the projections of like 12-1 and those type things, and in the ACC, they might be able to put that together. But when you get in the Final Four, it'll be a different story. I think that the competition level will ramp up if they are fortunate enough to get there.
You got to give Clemson credit. We've seen it happen to some degree, right? Chad Morris out as offensive coordinator, and then Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott take over as co-coordinators, and only maybe even got better than they were before. But Brent Venables, the defense piece is the more interesting part to me, because that is when Clemson took that jump, in my opinion, Rick, to a dominant program in college football. When you went out and you aggressively got the best defensive coordinator in the country, he came to your place and just took it to that next level. So to me, that's where I'm going to be most interested to see Clemson. Maybe not even just this year, but then you can piece it together for a year sometimes. But to keep it going next year or the year after, it's going to be fascinating, man.
Well, it is, and when you are proficient enough to win national championship game, that certainly helps your recruiting. And back when Clemson put that national championship game together years ago, I think it was in 2016. Look at how their recruiting went from that point on, and this is. Make no mistake, this is going to be a good football team this year up in the upstate. They're going to be very good. Just like you said, I think defensively that they'll be as good as anybody in the country, I think. Or certainly they've got the talent to be as good as anybody, and probably might be the best defense in the country. But it'll be interesting to see how they put it together with the new coordinators, and we'll see how all that rings true. But I'm very curious about South Carolina. I mean, there's so many high expectations coming off that bowl game that I think South Carolina fans need to temper it a little bit and say, let's take a step back and let's wait and see what happens, because South Carolina doesn't have the talent right now that some of the top teams in the country do, but they're getting there. And I do think Shane Beamer and that staff have done a great job of recruiting, particularly, this year and last year, with him able to bring in some of the players that he was able to get. And this year's recruiting class, I think he's knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. I think he's just doing very, very well. And so, but it takes time. And I think South Carolina, notoriously has been, fans have the expectations have always been on overload, I think. So I think, you have to look at this team and say, hey, look, if you can squeak out 7-8 victories out of this season, that's a tremendous season, I think. And I think that you need to, just temper it back a little bit. And if you get, like you said, you get into one of these games where you're not supposed to win and somehow pull it out in the fourth quarter, that can make it into a 9-win season. So, you just never know. Or you get into a bowl game and win a 9th game. But I think South Carolina, the program is on the upswing, but I do have to kind of temper the expectations a little bit this year.
I'm hearing a lot of wisdom and experience there through the years, no doubt about it, Rick, when it comes to that. At the same time, it's an interesting spot for Gamecock fans to be in post Steve Spurrier, the way that he kind of changed the expectation or almost the decorum of Gamecock football and how you look at it, as opposed to always being supportive no matter what and then demanding championship level play. I think maybe the Will Muschamp era kind of wiped that out. You win 6 games in 2 years combined, and you're ultra thankful to be back competitive, I think. And then who Shane Beamer is as well, I think Gamecock fans are going to be more patient with him or give him a little bit more leash than they would with another personality type at head coach. Are you with me on that?
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think that he's done a tremendous job in relating to these young players and able to recruit some of the kids that he's been able to bring in that I really didn't think he had a chance with some of them. But I think he's done a great job. I think those kids see that this program is on the upswing. Will this program take off this year? I certainly hope so. And I think South Carolina fans hope the same thing. But I think you have to look at it, realistically and just, hope that Rattler can, be that piece that has been somewhat missing. I told Shane back in the spring, I said, Shane, I don't know how you won 7 games last year without a quarterback. I don't know how you do that. I really don't. And, that to me was about as impressive of the whole thing of the whole season last year. How do you win games without a true quarterback back there? But yeah, and some of the people that South Carolina was able to beat, the Florida, the Auburn, the people like that. I mean, that's a marvelous job. And then to go beat North Carolina the way they did in that bowl game, I mean, they pretty much handled North Carolina with a wide receiver playing quarterback. You know, so it's you know, the job that they did cannot be overlooked. And you know, certainly all the accolades he's been getting, he deserves, I think. And but I just want South Carolina fans to, you know, stay behind this team, because it's going to be an interesting ride. It's going to be a tough season in terms of the schedule. And, you know, you can't, I don't expect South Carolina to beat Georgia, Texas A&M, those teams. But I hope that I can see progress to where, like I said, get into the fourth quarter and have a chance. You know, that's all that really matters. You know, that's the thing, you know, with teams that you're not on par with, you need to somehow find a way, you know, those first three quarters to stay competitive with them and stay within reach of them. And so I do think South Carolina is getting better, and I think they're going to continue to get better. And I do think they're closing the gap on Clemson. I really do. I really do think that they're going to close the gap on Clemson in the years to come. I don't expect them to beat Clemson this year, I'll be honest, but I don't expect a runaway in any way, shape, or form like we've seen in the past.
Well, it's been a massive gap. And if you took over for Will Muschamp, that was kind of job number one. You've got to close the gap. You absolutely have to do it. Rick not being a homer, I like it, is what Craig's saying. On Facebook Live, Chris says, Shane probably has the longest leash of any coach in the country right now. Right now, I agree. But, man, we all know college football, it's fickle. It changes real quick for sure, and we'll see how it continues to develop. Rick, you were talking about a quarterback in Spencer Rattler. What's a fair expectation for him? How good does he need to be, I think, to live up to expectations, I guess, is really what I'm asking.
Well, I think he needs to be very good. I mean, I think he's going to have to be very good, and I think he's going to have to put up some big games for South Carolina to win, particularly these close games that they're somewhat on par with. You know, the teams like Kentucky that have, you know, that I think South Carolina is fully capable of beating. The teams like Missouri that I don't know how they've lost to Missouri the past few years, but that's another team, you know, that you're expected to beat. You know, and I think those kind of teams that you're somewhat on par with, I think the Floridas, I think South Carolina is somewhat back on par with, you know, Florida right now with the new coaching situation. So I think you have to win the games, and I think he's going to have to be an integral piece in those games. I mean, if he doesn't play well in those games, and, you know, a little bit of so goes your quarterback and so goes your offensive line, so goes your game. I mean, I think so. So talent-wise, yes, he's there. I mean, I don't question his talent one way, shape, or form. I mean, he can flat throw a football. I mean, I've seen that, and I don't think I've seen a quarterback at Carolina ever be able to deliver a ball the way he can deliver the football. Now, you know, as to whether that translates into wins and losses, then, you know, we're going to have to wait and see. But I do think this team, like I said, I think they've gotten better. I think adding Stogner at tight end, I mean, you got Jaheim Bell as a multi-purpose guy, kind of like Debo was. I think they can make him into a player like that. You know, they've got ability. They've got guys over there that can make plays. But I think, you know, Rattler is going to be the key. I mean, you're going to have to keep him upright, and he's going to have to play within his own game a little bit, and don't get happy feet at times. You know, you don't have to get out of there at times. You have to, you know, you don't have to run out of the pocket. You don't have to do these things at times to make plays. And I think that's what got him in trouble sometime at Oklahoma. There were times I felt like, why is he getting out of the pocket? Why is he doing that? You know? And I think that's the things that they've seen at Carolina, and I think they'll try to keep him from doing that. Now, will that mean he's not going to run? I think there will be times he's going to have to run, but I think he needs to just stay calm. And I think he's that type kid. He'll stay within himself and just stay calm. And you know, the Oklahoma situation to me is kind of South Carolina's blessing, you know, because had he not kind of floundered at Oklahoma last year, I don't think you'd have ever seen him at South Carolina. I mean, obviously, it was a kid that was up for the Heisman Trophy. I mean, when has South Carolina had a guy that was up for the Heisman Trophy? I mean, I never knew one, but, you know, outside of George, of course, who won one. But this kid's got a lot of ability, Tim. He's got a ton of ability. So if he can play within his own game and that South Carolina can protect him, this team's got a good chance to have an excellent football season.
Yeah, I think that's the trick, right? Playing within himself, having a playmaker, but not forcing plays. And especially a quarterback, man, that line can be so thin. And especially if you're not getting protected well, you add that on to it. It is very difficult, I think, to even determine from the outside looking in, was it a good decision to try to make that play or not? We always go off the result, right? But sometimes you got to go off the process. And repeating that over and over.
I'll give you a good example, Tim. There's this guy, if he will play like Connor Shaw did with his ability, I mean, with his own ability. I'm talking about Rattler and his ability. If you look at, the Connor Shaw years, Connor probably wasn't the greatest talent South Carolina's ever had, but he was probably the smartest kid that you could put back there at quarterback, because you look at all the things that Connor was able to do. Not to say he didn't have talent, because he had a ton of talent, okay? But what I'm trying to say is that when it's third down and 5 yards to go, how many times did you see Connor Shaw drop back to pass and see the yard marker over there and run 6 yards and, just keep the chains moving? I mean, how many times did you see him on 3rd and 4? Make 5 yards or make 4 yards, just enough to keep the Carolina in possession of the ball. That's what Spencer Rattler needs to do. He needs to follow the mode of Connor Shaw and be, I think he's every bit of a leader of this football team. I don't think there's any doubt he's got all that going for him, and he's got all that. But he has to stay within himself and do the things that are going to help the football team win games, and not take it all upon himself, because yes, he's going to be the quarterback, and he's going to have to make plays, but don't be stupid. That's the other part. You don't want to, when you've got a quarterback back there that can scramble around, which he has that capability. But you don't want him running all the time, okay? You don't want him out of the pocket all the time running. So I think that what he'll need to do is just play within himself, play within the offense, and I suspect that he's going to do all this, because I mean he's a very talented kid. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I've never seen a quarterback over there with that ability like he has. So I think you have to hope, if you're a South Carolina fan, hope that that's the way it's going to turn out.
It's really interesting to me. There are a few things involved here. And Chris says the key for Rattler to make sure he's not trying to win the game himself, not to put too much on him. But when you have supreme ability, you've seen it on all levels, Rick, and you have to have supreme confidence as a quarterback. You got to balance that with also not doing too much. And I think that's your point about Connor Shaw. The decision-making was so elite.
Yes.
So consistent. And then how he dealt with everything else as well, getting banged up and everything. That's what I think still remains a massive question mark in Spencer Rattler's career, is decision-making and handling adversity. I think that's fair based off of what we've seen through a couple of years at Oklahoma, and then ultimately losing his job. And that is what is going to be so fascinating to me to see is, all right, how do you respond from that adversity in a new situation, new environment, and everybody being focused on you, like you mentioned, with all that talent?
Well, totally agree. And I think, South Carolina's coaches would do well to let Spencer, go back and watch Connor in some of the games, and go back and watch and see how he handled himself in some of those situations, and it's exactly like you said, Tim. The decision making was perfection with Connor. You knew what you were going to get. Even if he got flushed out of the pocket, he wasn't going to try to make that extra 4 or 5 yards if he didn't have to. And put himself in jeopardy. That's the other thing you don't want to do if you're a quarterback back there. And I think Spencer probably tried to do that a little bit too much, tried to make too much out of something at times, at Oklahoma. And that tended to get him in trouble. So I think you just want to do things that are going to, play within yourself, and play within the situation, the game situation. If you don't have to stretch yourself for 2 more yards, don't do it. Just keep the chains moving and, live to play another down. That's the old saying we used to say, live to play another down, rather than have to punt the football away, So you're exactly right, Tim. His decision making, I think, got him in trouble at times. And if he can calm that down, which, it's a blessing. Like I said, it really is a South Carolina blessing that, he had an opportunity to learn from that at Oklahoma. And, if he comes here and plays to his ability, I don't think we'll ever see another quarterback, or in a long time that with that type of ability that he has the ability to put up the kind of numbers that he'll be able to put up.
It's interesting to me because we've seen so many South Carolina quarterbacks being forced onto the field in a lot of ways since Dylan Thompson last year. So early on in their career, Dan Mullen talked about it the best that I've ever heard about it, about being fair to a guy. You got to be fair to quarterbacks and have them prepared before you send them out there. I mean, go down the list. The last 8 quarterbacks probably at Carolina have been kind of pushed out there and said, good luck, go be a good quarterback. Go figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
And now you have an experienced guy like Rattler who's been through it all. How he's going to handle those decisions, how he's going to handle that adversity. I think you're going to see a much more mature guy, but is he going to handle it in a more mature way, I think will be the key in a lot of ways for Rattler and the Carolina offense.
Well, I totally agree. And I go back to, and I'm old, okay? But I go back to my years and the opportunity to watch Jeff Grants play, and Jeff Grants was Connor Shaw before Connor Shaw. That was what he was. He just made plays. He just kept the offense moving. And that's why every time I see Jeff, I say, how's South Carolina's greatest quarterback doing today? Because he was just that type of player. And that's, as at quarterback, you need a guy that can control the game. And that's what, I think that with the ability that Rattler has over the ability of what some of the other quarterbacks have had at South Carolina. This guy has so much more ability in the things that he's able to do. It's almost scary if he plays really, really well. He's got the opportunity to be the best. He could be the best guy they've seen over there. He's got that ability. I really do believe that. I just marveled at the way the guy released the football in the spring. I thought, man, he just flicks it. It's like not even hard to this guy to throw a football downfield. Most quarterbacks, they drop back and you look like they're kind of struggling at times. Not him. He doesn't look like it's a struggle to flick the ball, about 30 yards right on a dime. So it's going to be interesting to see a guy with great talent, how he comes back from what he went through at Oklahoma. This is, to me, that's going to be the real interesting part. I think he's going to be way more mature, like you said, but can he control the football game? And he's going to need help. You can't put it all on his shoulders. And that's why I say, you want to give him great help, have an offensive line that's going to block for it. That's how you give him great help.
No doubt. And then you got a running back who maybe you think can make guys miss, and Marshawn Lloyd poised to take that next step for sure. We've been talking a bunch about the offense, Rick. I wanted to switch it over and talk a little defense, especially you being a former defensive back. The Cam Smith preseason hype is pretty high. What do you make of Cam Smith on the outside, and then how should we evaluate what kind of season he's having out there?
Well, I don't think you can evaluate a defensive back on just interceptions alone. I think you have to look at the overall game. I think talent-wise, Cam has a ton of ability. Now, can you put it together? It's kind of like every year is a new opportunity. Really, every game is every day in practice. If you're going to be an elite football player, you better refine your skills and you better work on them every day in practice. And I think, being a defensive back is hard. That's why you put your best athletes back there. Guys that, the defensive back can be a wide receiver. They can be a running back. They can do a lot of things to help your football team. but the best way is, that's the best position for your better athletes. And so that tells me, obviously, Cam, he's getting a lot of hype. He's right now projected as first round pick. I saw that the other day. As to whether he's able to maintain that, it's going to be an interesting thing, because he's going to have to cover some pretty good in that league. And if he can put it together week in and week out, I think that that's pretty impressive. So I really have not seen enough of Cam. I don't really know. I know he's got great ability, but I think that when you evaluate a defensive back, you basically have to evaluate them on how the other teams viewing them. I think you have to look and see, are they throwing near him? Are they targeting the guy that he covers most of the time, or what are they? And I suspect if he's as good as he is, that that's why you can't evaluate a good defensive back on interception, because a lot of times they don't get the ball thrown over there a whole lot. I think that's how you evaluate a really, really good defensive back, and their ability to play inside and outside. The thing that helped me more than anything was being a cornerback in college. I think if you're a corner in college, that shows that you have the ability. You can play safety. You can play a lot of positions back there. And I knew when I was going to pro football, I mean, they had already told me that we're gonna move you to free safety eventually. That's where you're going to end up playing. And believe me, I had no problem with that, because playing safety is more intelligence and ability than it is in playing corner. Corner, you're just a lockdown guy up there. I mean, you're basically, look, you got that, you either got the flat, you got the deep, you got, but you got to cover that guy. I mean, your best guy, you're going to have to cover. That's the way it is. And, in pro football, that's quite a thing to ask of a guy week in and week out. And that's why you see very few guys that can do it. Even guys that get drafted high, it's tough to, most of these guys don't last 2 and 3 years. They just don't. You can either cover or you can't. And a lot of times, a lot of these guys get picked on their ability, and or their performance during pro day and all that kind of stuff. I think where a lot of guys miss it is they don't develop their football skill as much as they do their track skills. Okay, and then that's a huge difference, is being able to cut on a dime, being able to turn your hips, being able to do things that other guys can't do. And that's the big difference on how you evaluate a great defensive back from a guy who just gets a lot of hype.
J.C. Horn being the first defensive player taken a couple of years ago, and his career at Carolina was fascinating. You mentioned the interceptions, and that's a great example, right? A guy who it bugged Carolina fans, it seemed like, to no end, that would not get an interception, but clearly a very talented football player, and ended up being the most talented guy according to the NFL draft in his season. And Dante Robinson is another example I throw out there, another first-round guy back in the day who had a very quiet Carolina career, I think, from those of us looking on the outside. If Cam Smith has a quiet year in that way, Rick, I think it's going to be a good sign for Carolina football, because it'll be the ultimate sign of respect in a lot of ways, that they won't go his way because he's that good.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a kid like Darius Rush or somebody on the other side, you better come every week ready to play, right? Because the ball's gonna come over there on your side. You're gonna have the opportunity to make a lot of plays, and that's not to say they won't, ever throw the ball over there toward Cam, because I'm sure there will be times that they're going to. And if he doesn't play well early on, believe me, he'll get plenty of balls thrown over there at him. That's just the way the nature of the game is. But the good thing that he's got going for him coming into the season, that Cam, is that he's getting a lot of respect. He's getting a lot of respect heading into the season, and whether that whether that pans out, we're certainly going to find out, because he's going to have an opportunity to cover a lot of really good football players.
Why would a college football coach not name a starting quarterback going into a season opener, Rick? LSU, Brian Kelly not doing it this year. It just irks me to no end. I feel like it comes off as so weak. How do you translate that, actually having been in locker rooms and played?
Well, I saw this yesterday, and he feels like it's going to give him some competitive advantage for them not to be able to prepare. Well, heck, they hadn't even played each other. Neither one of them's played a game yet. So I'm kind of with you. I mean, just name the quarterback. I mean, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't think he's going to gain any competitive advantage. And it's kind of like what Jim Harbaugh is doing over at Michigan. He's going to start one guy one week, and then he's going to start the other guy the next week. And then he's going to decide on who has the best game and who's going to be the starter. I mean, where do these guys come up with this stuff is what I want to know. But it's just I don't know. To me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't really think Brian Kelly's gaining any advantage out of waiting on who the starting quarterback is going to be.
How do you think he's going to do at LSU?
The jury's out, in my opinion. I don't know. He's an excellent football coach. I mean, he's won at Notre Dame, which is a hard place to win. And so, but you're talking the Southeastern Conference now, and it's not Notre Dame's schedule week in and week out. I mean, this is going to be a tough schedule for him to do. I mean, I think he'll be a good coach there. But a good coach at LSU is not good enough. It's never good enough. I mean, you got to win at LSU. If you win less than 10 games a year at LSU, they're ready to run you off. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's the way it is. That's why I feel sorry for some of these guys that, get jobs like that. And, the Alabama job. Imagine if you're going to succeed Nick Saban, what your expectation is going to be one day. Right. I mean, it's going to be through the roof. I mean, if you don't win 11, 12 games, I mean, you might as well face it. You're going to be, if you hadn't won 33 games after your third year, you're probably gone. I mean, Rick, it's crazy.
He said last year was a rebuilding year and they played for the national championship.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, how are you going to, do you really want a job like that? I always hear, people talking about, Dabo Swinney wants that Alabama job eventually. I don't really think he does. I don't think you'll ever see Dabo Swinney leave Clemson. I really don't. I don't think he needs to leave. Why would you want to leave Clemson to go to Alabama? Okay, why? Because you played there? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me in terms of, you've built your program at Clemson to be what it is now. I think it's foolish if you're Dabo Swinney to ever even consider an Alabama job after Nick Saban. If Dabo, I will say this, if he ever goes to Alabama, it won't be right after Nick Saban. It might be after the next guy that goes, it might be after that. But I don't think Dabo Swinney ever wants to leave Clemson. Would you want to leave? That's a pretty good job over there. I mean, Absolutely. And plus he's developed that program to where it is. And, hey, I just don't see it. I've heard people say that, well, Dabo will take that job when it comes open. I've never thought that. And I don't think he will.
I think that's a lot of Gamecock fans hoping that happens, and I don't think it's going to happen. I'm with you on that, man. As we get you out of here, and really appreciate your time today, the insight, everything. Looking forward to the season for sure. Wondering if you would like to leave us with what you think is going to happen on Saturday night, score-wise or just game flow-wise, whatever you're thinking, Rick. I'm wondering if we can get that connection back in. It looks like we got you. What you think? What can Gamecock fans expect from your opinion?
Well, I think, in a perfect world, South Carolina will, roll on and, run the football well. Rattler will throw it great. They'll catch it great. I think that's what South Carolina fans are going to expect, against Georgia State. You got to remember, Tim, there's only 11.5-point difference in this football game right now, according to the bettors. South Carolina's favored by 11.5 on Saturday. That's not a runaway. That's not a rout by any stretch of the imagination. I think that what you want to see if you're South Carolina, I think you want to see South Carolina have the ability to control the game. Okay, just control the game. Don't let it get out of your reach. Don't make mistakes. Don't throw interceptions. Don't fumble the football. Just play clean football. You've got better players overall than Georgia State does. Okay, you got to play clean, and you got to play hard. I think this is going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be tougher than most fans think. But I think that South Carolina ultimately should win this football game. They've got better players. And now whereas, Georgia State's coming in here, and I'm sure Sean's a fiery guy now. He's a fiery guy. And I mean, he's going to have those players ready to play this football game. I will assure you of that. And so I think that what you're going to see is South Carolina will win the football game. But I really think Georgia Southern may even cover the spread. I mean Georgia State. They may even cover the spread in this game. I suspect South Carolina will win between 10 and 14 points.
Rick, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you hopping in with us today and looking forward to all football season long. And thanks for doing it, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, it's my pleasure. And you got a great show, Tim. Really enjoy watching you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Rick Sanford on his way to see his mom up in Rock Hill. At R Hill AA is where you can find him. Rock Hill All-American. Took me a while to figure that out for Rick Sanford there on Twitter, where you can follow him. Every Tuesday during football season, we're going to have Rick drop in the 9 o'clock hour. And, man, a wealth of knowledge. Like, who was that mentioned that? Roger, I think, put that up on the live chat a while back. Troy, the resident Clemson fan, all Dabo could be at Bama, is another great coach at Clemson. He is the best in Clemson history and gets all the credit for it, right? And deserves it. So I think it's just a lazy take, right? Lazy and maybe hopeful from the Gamecock perspective of getting Dabo Swinney out of there and getting Clemson back to the fold. But again, this year, I understand the projections, but that's what they were last year too. Nobody predicted Clemson not to win the ACC last year, or very few people. If you had Pitt winning the ACC last year on August 30th, a year ago today, then you would be the smartest man in college football. And it's part of the beauty of it, right? But then from just the state of South Carolina right now, having something to prove is not where you want the big dogs. That's where Alabama is going into this season. I think that's why nearly everybody is predicting them to run the table and to win a national championship, because not only do they have all that talent, but Nick Saban easily can motivate them with, you have something to prove because you lost last year. And Nick Saban himself lost to his own assistant for the first time. So he's got plenty to prove as well. Ooh. That's why it's nearly impossible to sit here on August 30th, 2022 and say, no, I see somebody else winning the SEC West. That's the fascinating part about the Brian Kelly situation, not just the dumb not naming a starting quarterback, but the long-term projection. All right, if he's going to be the head coach at LSU for 5+ years, he's going to have to win a national championship in the next 5 years, right? And to do that, you got to jump over Alabama in your own division. And how is LSU going to do that now? Nick says it's going to be interesting to see Clemson's defensive performance scheme-wise with Venables leaving. They definitely still have elite talent on that side of the ball, especially the D-line. It was Perry Orth I was talking to one time, and he said every defense that he studied in his playing career at Carolina, there were always tendencies that you could go off of from the opposing defensive coordinator, except Brent Venables. I thought that was kind of the ultimate compliment, that you could always count on a defense to do certain things in certain situations because that was their style. That's what that defensive coordinator kind of defaulted to. And Brent Venables was the exception. And how he's going to run that Oklahoma program. Because Lincoln Riley doesn't get as much credit, I think, as he deserves, taking over from Bob Stoops. First-time head coach, being an offensive guy, but not just being stuck in that box, right? I mean, I get it that the college football playoff struggles were what they were. But the Big 12 domination was what it was too until last year. So both of those programs this year, Clemson and Oklahoma, but I'm with you, Nick, defensively especially. Just dominance, pure dominance, year after year after year. Yeah, Troy, I know. Desmond made some interesting picks, right? He's that guy this preseason, picking Pitt to make the playoffs this year. Yeah, I agree, Daddy. I don't know if he's looking for headlines, but he's got nothing to lose. He's a Heisman Trophy guy. He can say whatever he wants, right? He is by default a football expert based off his Heisman Trophy that he owns. So he can do that. And I'm sure ESPN encourages him to do that. But then you see Kirk Herbstreit watching him do that with his hands over his head, saying, "What's going on here?" But that's why you got to understand these conversations in the way they happen this time of year, and that's another reason why I am massively appreciative of game week number 1 being here, because we don't have to have those ridiculous speculative conversations anymore. And it's not speculation about Carolina's recruiting. The latest one, Desmond Umiazula, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, 4-star defensive lineman up in Maryland. That DMV pipeline continues. I believe he's a third guy. It's Nichols Harbor. That is a 5-star athlete. It's crazy that he's ranked number 1 at his position. What's his position? Athlete. What is that? That's not a thing. You can't play athlete on the football field, but apparently could either be an edge guy or a tight end, I think is where he's being projected as. And a 5-star guy, and the recruiting experts are calling him a lean to South Carolina at this point, which would make it 4 massive prospects out of that area for Shane Beamer and get Gamecock fans even more pumped up, bump the national recruiting rankings up probably a spot or 2 into the top 15 if they're not already there. I think they are there by some services right outside, according to on3.com at number 16. But all part of the enthusiasm, the energy, the positive vibes of the program for Carolina right now. You talk about cashing in on a bowl win and how important a bowl win can be. We have just seen it, and it's about to end, right? It ends at 7:31, right before kickoff. I assume will be a few minutes after 7:30 Saturday night. All of that, I think we're going to look back on and say, man, that was a tremendously important span of time. Bowl game to 8 months later, right before kickoff. Everything that happened off that bowl game, because there's going to be adversity. There are going to be bad games this year. It will be shocking to me if Carolina goes 8-4, 9-3, anywhere in there. I'm going 7-5 this season, but I think that would still be a really good season based off of who the Gamecocks are playing, what I saw in its entirety last year. And then you have a bowl game, presumably after that. You got to win that thing to continue a bunch of the positive vibes. We won the offseason. It's true, Daddy-O. In all caps, and I'm guessing sarcastic, but it happened. And again, near best case scenario for Shane Beamer so far at Carolina. Will year 2 be that? And if it is, what is that, right? You got to determine what that is first. DC, peacing out on us. Great show. Going to be a fun week. Absolutely, DC. Chris says, have a good day, fellow Gamecocks. Another day down. Well, it's only 10 a.m., man. I realize our day is done here. But still, I encourage you to go dominate the rest of the day, Chris. We will do it again tomorrow. We will have a lot to talk about from a press conference standpoint. Weekly press conference today for Gamecock football. Spencer Rattler amongst the Gamecocks who will be speaking. I clearly anticipate them to talk but not say anything. But Shane Beamer somehow has a way to cut through that to a certain degree and still deliver a message or somehow resonate, I think, with Gamecock fans. Anthony, appreciate the kind words. Says, great show, Tim. Nick says, looking forward to that NIL announcement this afternoon. Yeah, changing the game is the word. Doing something that's never happened before, never been done. That's going to be interesting to keep an eye on as well. Thanks for that reminder there, Nick. So 1:30 is the press conference time for Shane Beamer. The players will be speaking earlier, so you might want to keep an eye on social media. I would guess 12:30-ish, probably about the first time, maybe noon, as early as noon. Players might be getting some quotes from the beat guys, the media boys might be putting out some quotes from Carolina players, and then Shane Beamer again at 1:30. Enjoy the show from Daddy-O. John Frew with the hashtag Geritol, a great way to get out. Well done, John. I appreciate you guys. The live chat interaction, fantastic today. Really appreciate having Rick Sanford on, and going to do that Tuesdays during football season. Getting the routine here. Maybe it's the idea of the routine as well that we welcome during football season with Saturdays to look forward to. Just can't wait. We're all there, right? Can't wait, and yet still capture the moment. Live every day to its fullest. Carpe diem and all that stuff. Appreciate you guys. You know, the like, subscribe, comment. Feel free to encourage the sponsors as well. Bring them our way. Let's grow this sucker as big as we can make it. And football season, it is certainly the time. It is about to be our time here on Unrestricted Free Agent. That'll do it for our time today, though. August 30th edition in the books. We'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks for supporting the show.